Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to get to Black Mirror's recent season that just dropped on Netflix. But that was our plan. Two big events kind of happened this week as well that we need to add in as well, which is Netflix Tudum, which is their kind of Netflix's event. They have it, I think, like maybe 2 to 4 times a year that they'll do this thing. And where they show a bunch of their kind of geekier Netflix content stuff that people get excited about. And so they put out a lot of trailers and stuff for that. So we're going to cover some of that.
Every June.
Yeah. I think they do it multiple times a year, though.
Maybe. I don't know. I just remember last year when they, announced the new Castlevania.
That was the time they did, 3... No, they do different events. Because they did Tudum and then they did that Geek Week that was
yeah, that's right. That was Geek Week. Never mind.
Yeah,
I get these things confused.
It's all the same. It's just a Netflix event where they put a bunch of trailers on YouTube. That's all it is.
By the way, spoiler, 0 updates on Castlevania at this Tudum. Failure. Failure Tudum.
This will be at the next Geek Week, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
And then we got the bigger drop, which was a Nintendo Direct.
An entire Netflix. Yes. They just dropped the entire Netflix on Tyson's lap, and it is sore.
Nintendo dropped their Direct.
Oh yeah,
we predicted was not going to happen.
a day's notice. They literally announced it yesterday, and it happened today.
Yeah, and we were sure this was not going to happen, but it did, and so we're going to be covering some of the games that showed up in that event as well. But let's get started with our On the Horizon segments. On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next week or so, and we gotta get through this because some stuff's coming up. So first off, The Gold. It's a mini-series based on a true 1983 heist story, is coming to Paramount Plus on Sunday, June 25th. Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life is coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, PC, and Switch on Tuesday, June 27th. Hijack, which is a real-time series, kind of like 24, except it's only 7 episodes, about a hijacked flight, and it stars Idris Elba, and that is coming on Wednesday, June 28th to Apple TV+. The Witcher is returning on Thursday, June 29th on Netflix. This is part 1 of the final Cavill season. Nimona, which is a animated graphic novel adaptation, is coming on Friday, June 30th to Netflix. This features the voices of Chloe Grace Moritz and Riz Ahmed from The Night Of. Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan is getting its 4th and final season on Friday, June 30th on Amazon Prime. The biggest game that for some reason wasn't at the Nintendo Direct, Everybody 1-2 Switch, is coming on Friday, June 30th.
Wow, I wonder why they want to dedicate 20 minutes to that game at the Direct.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy. That's coming to Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. I will quickly add, it's pretty bad when, it's a upcoming first party developed and published game, and then that has, basically 0 marketing, except for, a video Nintendo put up on their YouTube recently.
A video and a tweet, yeah.
And they don't want to put it in their Direct.
Yeah. Front Mission First Remake, which already came out on the Nintendo Switch, is coming out on Friday, June 30th to the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, this is the remake or port or whatever, is coming on Friday, June 30th to the PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Switch. Oddly enough, I didn't see listings for the next-gen platform, so I guess they're just counting on backwards compatibility for those. And then Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is hitting theaters on Friday, June 30th. So that is what was coming up on the horizon, and now we're going to cover On Beat. On On Beat is our news segment. And as we mentioned, we had 2 big news events. We also had a few other trailers outside of that dropped. So we're going to start that off with some of the trailers that dropped outside of these 2 big events. And that is What We Do in the Shadows. It's a new season. Dropped another trailer. Again, looks hilarious. Nandor, I think, is stealing the show in this one. But it looks like Guillermo's trying to become a vampire, but it's not necessarily working that well for him. Maybe that has to do with his vampire hunter bloodline. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's some theories. There's the theories that his vampire hunter blood prevents it, or maybe it's just his vampire friend, being a brand new vampire, doesn't understand entirely the ritual to turn somebody, and so he just like messes it up. Like, that's also a possibility.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. It'll be funny. Of course, it looks funny as always. Colin Robinson had a few funny bits in the trailer, and I think, like I said, Nandor, I think, steals this trailer, though. He was pretty funny.
Oh, Nandor, yeah. It's a hilarious trailer. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be hot vampire summer, for sure.
Then we got a trailer for Kraven the Hunter that proves, once and for all, that Sony has no fucking clue what they're doing.
Oh, I thought it was going to be that Sony makes the best movies.
So Sony has no fucking clue what to do with their Venomverse Spider-Man adjacent properties. They've stumbled like blindly. They failed upwards into success with Venom somehow. Not good movies, but they did pretty well at the box office. Morbius was a pretty big embarrassment. Kraven the Hunter looks better than Morbius, I guess. That's not necessarily saying that much.
I mean,
some cool looking violence in it, I guess.
Yeah, it's brutal, but man, it's certainly a movie about a guy named Kraven who has superpowers and is a hunter. I
just don't understand how Zeus had Quicksilver as a child. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. It's like I was talking to you. It really looks like a movie made by like people who saw the name Kraven the Hunter.
And they heard the word Marvel attached to it, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. And
so like,
they had to build the entire movie around that information.
So he's got to have like superpowers, right? You know, okay.
Yeah.
Radioactive lion powers.
I mean, for as far as I can tell in like the trailer, he wasn't even Russian. I was like, what?
Very, very weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
Looks pretty cheap too, actually, so I don't know. But that's it for the regular trailers. Now we're going to go on to Netflix Tudum. They had a few trailers that we're going to talk about, and there was also a big casting announcement, kind of a stunt casting almost, that's going to be fun to talk about in the future when we find out what that means. But from Netflix Tudum, or whatever it's called, we have a few things to talk about. First off, we got a trailer for the Gal Gadot Netflix movie Heart of Stone. It's kind of like an espionage movie. We've been getting a lot of those on streaming services. We're getting like miniseries and shows and movies that are kind of like fun action espionage stuff. So yeah, Heart of Stone is the Gal Gadot version of that, I guess.
Yeah, it's a spy thriller. It looks like a fun movie. I mean, I watched it and I'm like, yeah, like that looks like a pretty decently fun thing to hop on Netflix and watch. Like, why not?
Netflix doesn't have a shortage of that. Like they have a pretty good track record of fun action movies on their service. They're not necessarily anything that anyone remembers.
Honestly, like that's where they excel. I don't think it's worked for Netflix in the past to try and make like prestige films and like chase awards. Like this stuff is what does well for them. Mm-hmm. And so clearly they're going to stick with that formula. And I don't see anything wrong with that as long as they're fun movies and they're well made. Sure.
Yeah. That's Heart of Stone. We also got another trailer. This is I think the second trailer for the miniseries All the Light We Cannot See, which is a World War II kind of, I guess, Holocaust drama. I assume somebody in it's blind because of the title and because they had like Braille transition into the title and the credits.
Yeah, it seems so.
So it has to have something to do with somebody being blind. And hey, it wasn't just Jews that got locked up in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. It was also people that were handicapped.
It's funny because I just realized I just got done saying like, oh, Netflix should be making fun films and like not chase. And I'm like, wait, this is an award chasing movie.
Well, it's not a movie. It's a miniseries.
It's a miniseries.
Completely different.
I thought this was a movie. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's a miniseries. I thought it was initially too. It looks like a movie, but it's a miniseries. I think it's like 4 episodes or something.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. That's good.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. I mean, it's got Mark Ruffalo. Oh, yeah.
Next up, we got probably the weirdest reveal in this
This
whole
was like kind of
thing.
this was really out of left field, yeah.
So we get this thing called the Archies, clearly based on Archie comics, but
Yes.
it's like a Bollywood kind of thing. It's an Indian musical.
Yes.
It's so strange.
Sorry,
I mean, it looks good. It's pretty.
It's by like an Indian creator, and yeah, it's a Bollywood take on Archie, but yeah, it looks pretty, it looks well produced.
I guess this is kind of what we can expect, this kind of thing from Netflix, because they're so international. They have they can get the rights to something big in America like Archie, and then put an Indian crew on it because they have people there, they have staff there, they have teams there making content, so it's like, might as well kind of start crossing them over,
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting project. I don't even know if I'll watch this, but I want to see the story about how this progresses, what ends up happening with this. Next up, we got the long-awaited trailer for the next TV series from the creators of Game of Thrones, the much maligned creators of Game of Thrones. But this is based on a massively popular Chinese novel series.
Oh my god, creators of Game of Thrones and massively popular novel series. Name a more doomed duo.
So here's the argument I have. I've seen so many people kind of shit on this because of Dan and Dave being involved. Here's the thing. What were the seasons of Game of Thrones where they had material? There's the first 4 seasons. After that, there's some some book material in season 5, but about half of it or more was made up because they didn't have any more content.
I think it's less like they ran out of content and more like they just seemed to get bored with the series as they were nearing the end and as they had to create content themselves for it.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's an argument, and it's
so
also
like
a
the
long
fear
series.
is like, okay, like if we get invested in this, like what happens if they get bored again?
Well, this is a 3-book series. So first off, it's a lot shorter. Second off, that's one way you can look at it. Another way, as I said, is that they didn't have material for how this was going to end,
True.
So maybe they're just not good at that aspect of writing. Maybe they're good at adaptation, but they're not good at kind of doing it themselves. And if that's the case, this book series is complete. It's done. So a lot of the things that people are afraid of when it comes to like a Game of Thrones team doing a new series or something is kind of irrelevant in this project because it's a finished book series. It's only a 3-book series. So, and they have another co-showrunner on with them as well. So who knows like how that's going to affect it. Even if they get bored, there's somebody else involved that's there, I don't know. We'll have to see what ends up coming from it. It looks beautiful from the trailer. It's got a few Game of Thrones cast members returning, which is cool. Got Davos and, what was Jon Snow's friend's name? Samwell, right? Samwell Tarly?
Yeah, Samwell Tarly,
Yeah, so it's got Davos and Samwell Tarly are both in this. You also have Benedict Wong from Doctor Strange. Wong himself is in this. So it's got a pretty good cast. I barely understand what this book series is about because it's supposed to be like very complicated, but I think it has something to do with First Contact. And there's some like weird fantasy looking elements. I think that has to do with it's like a VR MMO or something that people, they do kind of, I guess, like the movie The Last Starfighter?
Yeah.
Where they put like an arcade machine to like recruit pilots and stuff for like a space war. There's something kind of like that going on where they put something into a game to test people who are like using this game for, I guess, like it's like logic puzzles and things to figure out like certain requirements they're going to need to make for their first contact or something. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I barely understand it myself. I have not read the books. I've only kind of heard a little bit about it, but it's supposed to be like a really fascinating piece of science fiction. So be interesting to see what they can do with it, but it definitely, at least it looks pretty.
Yeah, true that. Yeah, absolutely.
And you want to talk about risky adaptations coming to Netflix. Anime adaptations in general are extremely hard to do in live action because anime is just kind of goofy and weird and very hyper stylized and very heightened, I guess is the best way to put it. Of any anime or manga adaptation to make, the one that I would say would be like the most impossible to properly do would probably be One Piece because it's so weird. It's so so just like off the wall. It's a great series. It's got a lot of humor. It's got some of the best world building I've ever experienced in anything. It's really good. And I have no idea how you can adapt that faithfully. Like, I could imagine there's a way you could adapt it if you just kind of did it very loosely, but to make like a kind of a loyal adaptation where you're sticking to the looks of the characters and sticking to the looks of the world and the same storylines and the same kind of characteristics, it seems almost impossible to do, for like One Piece. That being said, the creator of One Piece, Ichiro Oda, I'm sorry, not Oda, is heavily involved in this apparently. He's made several comments that he's directly involved in this, that he's not just like signing off, that he's actually like contributing a lot to what they're doing with this. And one thing I have to say to its favor is a lot of the characters, they look good. Some of them looks like kind of cosplay because the costumes don't necessarily work as well in live action, but they still like look the part kind of. And the actor playing Luffy has like a huge amount of charisma that's just pouring off of him, and like this kind of wide-eyed optimism that like comes through in his voice. And if they can nail that, that's like they're like a third of the way there. If they can nail Luffy and who he is, and it feels like they kind of got that. They feel like they kind of got that optimism and that charisma coming off of him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it looks pretty decent. I mean, I'm not like a huge like One Piece fanboy. Like I barely like seen it. So like I'm not like the best person to judge how faithful this is or anything. Like,
talk about a challenge though, man.
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But what I seen, like it looked better than what I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. There's a few parts that look a little goofy, but I mean, you have to understand that when you're watching it in the context of a show, if you're buying into the characters and you're buying into the story and the emotion of the scenes of what's happening, you're gonna like glance right over some of the little weird bits, the things that maybe look a little strange and stuff, because that's just the way our minds work, as humans.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Hopefully this turns out well, because I'm a big One Piece fan.
Hopefully, for your sake, hopefully it turns out well.
And then the last thing to talk about from Netflix's event isn't a trailer. It's just that they announced a casting for Stranger Things Season 5, the first new casting. Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2, Sarah Connor herself, is joining the cast of Stranger Things.
Yep, that'd be cool.
I have to, the only thing I can imagine is that she's gonna be kind of like the next version of, was it Dr. Brenner? The guy that was like Papa in Stranger Things, that was running the experiments on all the kids. Like, I kind of have to imagine maybe she's involved in that.
Maybe, yeah. I really don't know. She could be anybody. She could be like a mother, like in
she'll be like Joyce, like Joyce's mom or something, or
something. Like it could be anything really.
Yeah,
we'll have to see. Sometimes companies decide like a well-known name for like a small role, really advertising it, like when they hyped like Ian McShane being in Game of Thrones, turned out to be basically a cameo.
Yeah. Well, I think what Stranger Things has done pretty well is they've gotten a lot of icons from the 80s in their projects, and it's almost like it's not even as important what their role is. It's just the fact that they brought this 80s icon into this kind of 80s nostalgia worship series,
Right.
And they did it with, Winona Ryder, of course, in the series in general. But then, in the second season, they had, Sean Astin joined the cast for season 2. And they get these kind of cool things, they got the Dread Pirate Roberts in season 3, When they can do stuff like that, that's just cool in general, even if they're not playing a significant role. But sometimes they do. I think Bob, who was Sean Astin's character in season 2, I think that really worked. And I think the emotional connection to Sean Astin as a figure from our 80s nostalgia made that work more somehow. So yeah, I'm excited to see what this is going to be. Maybe it's small, who knows? But it's the final season, so could be interesting too. That is it for the Netflix event. And then the last part of our news segment is the Nintendo Direct. So we're kind of two slightly different opinions on this Nintendo Direct. I was not really blown away by it at all. I think
it depends on
a bit more excited.
I think your enjoyment of this Direct really depends on how much of a Mario fan you are, because we feasted, and everybody else sorry. I just don't know what to tell you if you're not a fan of Mario.
I like Mario, but I think it's not just a fan. You have to be like a hyper fan to be really excited about. I mean, this isn't a new 3D Mario. This isn't,
This is a new 2D Mario. 2D Mario is just as good as 3D Mario.
But that's also just one game from the entire 40-minute direct.
And if it was only this one game, it would still be like the best thing like they showed all E3.
But anyways, let's start off this Nintendo Direct. We picked out a few titles to talk about. We got Dragon Quest Monsters Dark Prince. I believe this was already announced earlier this summer.
They announced like a month ago, they announced a new Dragon Quest Monsters was in development for Switch. They did not give a title. They did not give any details as to what it would be or when it would come out. I thought
Dragon Quest, come on.
I just thought, based on like the very sparse announcement with no information that it was going to be a ways away, it's actually this December. And also another thing is like, yes, this is coming out in the West. We haven't had a Dragon Quest Monsters game come out in the West since Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 2 on the Nintendo DS. They skipped over Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 3 on the 3DS. Several Monsters games that they declined not to localize at all. But this is getting localized, so that's really cool for Dragon Quest fans of Dragon Quest Monsters. I haven't played much of those games, but I mean, they're pretty fun games. I played through like Joker on the DS. Pretty fun game.
Next up, we got our longest trailer yet, our most involved trailer yet for Pikmin 4. Finally gives us details about what that whole nighttime mode is that we got teased in the first gameplay trailer they showed. We got a little bit more details about the dog, about the storyline going forward, about some new modes. They got these special battle modes that you can trigger because you have this opponent that's like trying to steal some of the unconscious people of your race that you're trying to locate in this game, and you have to play like a game against them.
Yeah, that part is like interesting. I was like, okay, this is
it also hints heavily at a multiplayer mode too, because that's going to be, that's going to be a multiplayer mode as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's going to have online multiplayer apparently.
The nighttime stuff looked interesting. They have a Pikmin that only comes out at night. You have the creatures are particularly crazy at night, and they come after a certain type of structure that you need to protect using these new Pikmin that only come out at night. So it's adding a whole other thing. It kind of reminds me of, the depths in Tears of the Kingdom, where you have like this whole other kind of like, it's almost like a different game within a game or something that you go in and there's new rules that you have to understand when you play. It's kind of got that vibe to it. And it's also got that vibe because it's creepy and it's dark, So, yeah, Pikmin 4 looking more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Pikmin 4 is the next major game coming out now. So, the marketing was going to ramp up. That's coming out next month. Mm-hmm. I'd say this looks great. Like, I love Pikmin. I played through Pikmin 3 on the Wii U. Oh, speaking of old Pikmin games, they also announced Pikmin 1 and 2 for Switch.
Now, it's stealth dropped.
It's available now digitally. There is a physical version coming out that's going to have both games on one cart.
Comes with a Volvi sticker.
I saw that go up on retailers. That's the cool thing now. You can play the entire Pikmin franchise on the Switch.
Yeah. There's one you can't.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Pikmin. Okay. You had to remind me that existed, didn't you?
Oh, wait. There's another one that isn't on there, too.
Oh, don't mention Pikmin Bloom. I'm gonna... Stop it. You can play all the mainline Pikmin games on the Switch.
And they need to put those Pikmin animated shorts on the Switch somehow.
Yeah.
Alright, so that's Pikmin 4. Next, we got a trailer for Detective Pikachu Returns. So what's interesting here is that Detective Pikachu was a game that took a very long time to come over here, and it didn't come over here until after they had announced and shown trailers for a Detective Pikachu movie that was being made, a Hollywood movie, before they finally said, I guess we can bring Detective Pikachu over if we have to.
Yeah, if we have to, yeah. That they brought it over and it's sold, and then they announced the sequel, and it's been years and years since the announcement. We hadn't seen hide nor hair of any kind of Detective Pikachu sequel that was supposedly being made. There was a lot of speculation that it was canceled behind the scenes, and no, here it is. It's real, and it's about to be released soon.
Still doesn't have Danny DeVito.
No, it doesn't. Well, I think I think Pikachu sounds appropriate. It's definitely not the Ryan Reynolds voice, but it sounds fun. It looks cute. It looks like a cute game. I'd be down to play it.
And now we're starting with the Mario love, and the first game showing that really kind of blew people's minds. It's a remake, but it's a big, heavily beloved game that nobody thought we'd ever get.
SNES game.
Nobody thought this was going to happen. You know, people wished this was going to happen, but nobody seriously thought this was going to happen.
No.
Super Mario RPG. They brought it over. Nintendo kind of killed off their own Mario RPG projects that followed this game, but people have been obsessed with this game. They've been wanting, you know, the character Gino from this game and Smash Brothers, and they eventually got him as a costume for the Mii Fighters, nothing else. People have been fighting for this. This is one of those games, like, this is like Mother 3 in the sense of, like, fans are really dedicated to trying to get more out of this game. To get, like, a sequel, to get a remake, to get it just put on you know, Nintendo Switch Online or on anything for forever. This is something that fans have really loved and has not really gotten a lot of support. And all of a sudden we have a full freaking remake of it. Good for Mario RPG fans. When I heard there was a SNES remake, I was kind of more hoping for like a Chrono Trigger.
Oh man, I'm surprised you are not a Mario RPG fan.
No, just never got too into it. But maybe I'll play it again. Who knows? I've said it before though on this podcast. I think I'm pretty much spoken for this year when it comes to games.
Mario RPG Remake is like, I saw the thing, I was like, I cannot believe this is real. This exists.
Even not being my thing, I'm shocked that this is a thing. You know, that this exists. This is really just blows my mind.
This is like the first real RPG I ever fell in love with. This is the game I played before I played Chrono Trigger and before I played Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And before that, my interactions with JRPGs weren't entirely positive. So
perhaps that's why, like, I don't have much of a reaction to it, because I was into RPGs before Super Mario RPG came out, and it just didn't do too much for me. But maybe that's it. Maybe it's just, for a lot of people, this is their first RPG, and because of that reason, it's going to hold a special place in their heart. Similar to, like, Pokemon. Like, I never got into Pokemon, but I just was like, I was right outside of it. Like, if it had come out maybe a year earlier, I probably would have picked that Pokemon when it first came out, and maybe I'd be like a huge Pokemon fan. I never got into Pokemon.
I got into it just because I was into JRPGs and I thought the concept sounded interesting. I was like, oh, okay, so you capture monsters that you fight and then you recruit them to your team? So you could go out and get like I was just imagining like a Final Fantasy, like where you fight like a dragon and you capture it and then all that dragon's power is like yours. I was like, oh, that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah. It's one of those things though where like, if you were just outside of that range, like if you were not interested in that game, the first one when it came out, you just never got into Pokemon, you know? That's just how it is. But if you happen to hit that right range where you were just at the right place for it, like I said, I probably missed it by a year.
Right.
Like, if it came out a year earlier, I probably would have like tried it, and then if I liked it, then I would have been hooked, and that would have been it, you know? But because I wasn't, I'm not, you know? So it's just kind of, it's a weird game in that range. And I think Super Mario RPG might be similar in that sense, you know? Like, I think if you were already like really big into RPGs, Super Mario RPG probably didn't have as much of an impact on you. But if you weren't that big into RPGs, Super Mario RPG was like it was like your training program for getting into RPGs, you know?
Yeah.
And so like it's gonna hold that
before Super Mario
nostalgia.
RPG, like I was obviously a big Mario fan, so like I was lured in by that. RPGs I tried prior to that, like I've tried playing like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest on the NES. Anything on the NES I couldn't really get into. I rented Final Fantasy II back in the day, got really confused at what I was doing.
Yeah, what are all these goddamn numbers?
Yeah, gave up pretty quickly. Super Mario RPG, I got it because of Mario, and it just clicked for me. And then, like, a year or so later, I played Chrono Trigger, and that was it. Everything was like, okay, we are off to the races.
It was like a Trojan horse for RPGs for you.
Yes.
Yeah, a bunch of RPGs got loaded up inside that Trojan horse, and it went right into your gates. The gates of your heart.
The gates of my heart. So yeah, this is like one of the most significant announcements this summer. This is like, as far as like, you know, what I want out of E3, I want megaton, like, jaw-dropping announcements, and this is it. Nobody, you know, other than like arguably the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, sure, arguably, other than that, there hasn't like been that kind of announcement at any of these shows. So that was like really awesome to see.
And that brings us to our final announcement for this Nintendo Direct, the final thing that we're going to be talking about, and that is the last game they showed, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. It's New Super Mario Brothers.
No, it's not. That's way too... I got into an argument with you because that's way too reductive of a take, because it is definitely not. This is doing way more than New Super Mario Brothers ever did. New Super Mario Brothers is safe. It is a safe Mario experience for people nostalgic about NES and SNES Mario, where Mario gets like a new power-up or whatever, but everything's standard. This is Mario like tripping balls. This is like, you got pipes fucking dancing, you got all kinds of weird shit happening.
Let me make an analogy. New Super Mario Brothers is Street Fighter 2, and this is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
No, not even. not even. This is an evolution of the formula. This is doing so much new stuff. I had not seen so much new things happening in a 2D Mario game since forever. There's so many new ideas in this. And I was watching this, I was like, wait, what? That? What? It just kept coming, one after another. I was like, this is insane.
No Van Gogh level failure.
This blew me away. I can see why they took new out of the title, because this is a completely different animal. That's why it's not...
You say it's completely different, but come on. When they showed it they had the music with the people doing the a cappella version of the music over the top of it. That's New Super Mario Bros.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they didn't use New Super Mario Bros. As a base or anything, but like the fact is like they're evolving the formula in a meaningful ways.
I got it. It's Tears of the Wonder.
It's Tears of the Wonder. They're taking the 2D formula and they're evolving it. They redid the art style to where it looks much better. It has like more of a claymation or a hand-drawn quality to it.
Oh, I don't see that at all. I watched the trailer multiple times and I don't see that. Like, it still looks plastic to me. But what it looks like, I think the only thing that looks different to me is they did a lot with the animation of the characters. So like, if the character is getting blown by wind, instead of just being pushed back, they're like, have these exaggerated animations and stuff now. It's like, to me, it's a style pass. Like, they stylistically went over it and just made, like, refined everything and said, okay, this doesn't have enough character. Add lots of character to this spot, you know? This animation's gonna have this. Instead of just having it be generic, the character falls, we need to, like, emphasize the, you know, the facial expressions and the, you know, things tilting out, and we need to, you know, do some bending and pushing like 2D animation style on the sprite so that it moves in a way that makes sense, you know, that looks stylistic and fun.
I will say, look up screenshots of New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe and this and compare them, and you will see the difference. New Super Mario Bros. Looks a lot more lifeless compared to this.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that's in the animation.
Look at the still shots. You can even like tell a difference from still shots.
If the still shots are like mid-frame of like one of the more wild animations. But if like, don't look at the characters, just look at the background sprites and stuff. Just look at that and don't look at the characters and the way they're animating. And it looks the same.
Right. I mean, I will grant you it looks very similar, but there's definite improvement here. There's definite improvement.
Yeah, of course. To me, it looks like a mod. It looks like somebody went in very lovingly and made a very detailed mod that addresses the criticisms that most of the people had with New Super Mario Brothers, which is that it felt kind of lifeless. And they just went in and said, okay, I'm going to just add all sorts of animations to the characters, add voice acting, which just is weird, but like somehow works in the way this is presented.
I will say this seems to me like they looked at New Super Mario Brothers and they said, how can we overhaul this entire thing to make it feel genuinely new and not just more, you know, not just a retread, not just more of the same, that like every game with the new like start feel. Like the Wii version felt fresh because like it added the multiplayer, but like then they quickly came out with the 3DS and the Wii U versions, and there wasn't like much different between the games, and there was like a lot of complaints about that. And again, if you watch this trailer, there's so much like new stuff going on. The creativity is just out of the world. I think the Mario team is just firing on all cylinders right now.
Do you know what flavor text is?
Yeah, it's like the stuff on like Magic the Gathering cards that like explains lore and stuff.
Yeah, so to me that's what this is. This is flavor text. This is
flavor text.
They went over, but it's not text. It's like flavor sprites. Like they went over.
I'm not
and they
talking
said,
about
this
like
just
the
looks
graphics
lifeless.
anymore.
I know, but a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in the game, even the stuff that's gameplay, like some of that stuff looks not too far off gameplay wise from some of the more interesting stuff they had later in like New Super Mario Brothers U and stuff. There were some fun levels that kind of did some weird stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look too far off from that. What they did is they just said these characters are just lifeless as shit. They're just moving. It doesn't feel like Mario. It doesn't feel like something that you're attached to at all.
Yeah.
It's very boring and very safe. And they went in and said, okay, fuck that. That's what we're changing. And they gave life. They gave flavor to Mario. He was plain tofu, and now he's like, you know, pad thai or something.
Yeah. Now he's delicious, and he's also an elephant. Like, if this was like another New Super Mario Bros. Game, the trailer would be like all the standard platforming, and then like at the end it would be like, oh, and he's an elephant now. This has like the talking flower. This has like the new, like the Wonder Flower or something, which it's literally Mario tripping balls. This is Mario tripping balls, the video game. They did it. That's Mario like on shrooms.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about before we started recording the podcast that we saw Koizumi on the Nintendo Direct, and
yes,
this
and
kind of explains why he's there. He's not only is he the head of Mario, as you mentioned, but he's also like a very inventive game designer.
Yes.
Who does some weird shit with his games, and it feels like he had a hand in this. Like he went to the studio making this game and just said, okay, I'm sick of this shit. You guys need to fucking listen to me now. And he went and just laid down the law, and they fucking adjusted everything to his whims, and this is why you have the cracked out Mario game.
Yes, exactly. And I think this is now my most anticipated upcoming game of 2023. Starfield is officially number 2. Sorry, Starfield. You know, you just don't have Mario tripping balls. You know, you'll have a talking flower. See, like, this game, like, I noticed it on my second watch. I didn't notice it the first time around, but like on the second watch at the end, when like Mario transforms into like Elephant Mario, like the talking there's like a Goomba sitting there sleeping, and like the talking flower is like, oh, that Goomba looks so serene, and then Mario like kicks it and kills it, and the flower's like, oh, well then.
I think this is the kind of flavor and stuff that we actually did have in 3D Marios. Like,
yes.
Pretty much all along, but just haven't had in 2D Mario since, you know. I mean, I guess you could say Mario Maker had a lot of flavor to it as well. But it wasn't so much in the gameplay and stuff as it was like little secrets hidden in the menus as you're building the levels and stuff that were like quirky and weird, you know? That was kind of what was in Mario Maker, but it wasn't the same kind of thing as like just being in the game as you play it. And they've had it in the 3D games. Like in Super Mario 3D World, sometimes you'll be like running through the level and like the Goombas are just like literally laying around like with sunglasses on, like floating in the water and enjoying a summer vacation or something. And then you show up and they pop into their like, you know, combat mode or whatever. But
yeah.
It's like, there's like all sorts of weird shit like that in the 3D Mario games that just, you know, little details that aren't in the 2D ones for a while, so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's why I'm hyped for this game. Yeah, I don't think I have anything more to say about it. I do have one thing to say about it. This was also in a direct. This was previously announced. Sonic Superstars, which is a 4-players 2D Sonic game. And I just thought it was interesting that Sega decided to release a obviously new Super Mario Bros. Inspired Sonic game this year. And then Nintendo was like, oh yeah, we're putting out a new 2D 4-player Mario game.
Well, Nintendo's like, oh yeah, we're putting out a new 2D Mario game that recognizes all of the faults of the one that you copied.
Yeah, exactly. It's
like,
just
oh
weird.
Yeah, we see that you followed our example on this. Yeah, you know, we kind of realized that wasn't really a good direction to go, so this is kind of our answer to that.
It's just interesting to me. It's Mario and Sonic going head to head again, like it was 1991.
And again, Mario's like way in the lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it for our On Beat segment, and now we're going to move on to our final segment, full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are covering the entire season, the most recent season of Black Mirror, the Streamberry season, I should say, even though it's only really referenced in 2 of the episodes.
It's only really, yeah, exactly.
But
I thought it was going to get like some reference in every episode.
But still, you could put some thought into it, imagine.
Two of the episodes, it wouldn't have made sense to mention because they're set in periods where Netflix did not exist. Streaming services were not big.
Well, actually, 3 of them, because you have...
Yeah, that's right. No, 3 of them. That's right. The last 3 episodes, it would not have made sense to make a Netflix reference. Because the last
Unless
3 are like period
that
pieces.
On Netflix, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, I think in the first episode, when they're showing like all the stuff that's on Netflix, I think Beyond the Sea is like the title of one of the shows, and also like the documentary that's like made in the second episode is also listed on Streamberry in like the first episode when they're browsing Streamberry for the first time. So I think those are your references.
Well, let's go through these episodes one by one. We're going to start off with the first episode and the lightest episode of the entire run. The one that kind of feels most at home with the, I guess, Netflix-owned Black Mirror episodes, or like the more modern kind of Black Mirror episodes, and that is Joan is Awful. This is an episode in which a office like manager, I guess, I think like a Silicon Valley company, I think, suddenly finds out that her life is on Streamberry, which is the parallel to Netflix. Yeah. And it's like basically the things that just happened in her life that day.
Yeah. She finds out her life is a TV show and is being broadcast almost in real time to the entire world.
Where she's played by Selma Hayek.
Yeah, where she's played by Selma Hayek. To the detriment of her entire life, because it wreaks havoc on her life and her relationships as like her secrets are revealed to like everybody all at once. And she goes on a crusade to stop Streamberry and take her life back. And obviously it's commentary on streaming services and the links they'll go to for content, and also AI and its effects on AI generative content.
They also have the part where it literally spells out like a common fear that people have with surveillance technology. And that's the idea of like, I was talking to my friend about like roses, and then all of a sudden I have ads for roses, you know? And they straight up mention that as like a thing within the episode as well.
They try to give like a plausible explanation for how this works. It doesn't work. It's funny because they do their best, but there's a point where they admit it's bullshit because they literally have a character refer to like the computer that's generating this as magic. So it's fine. This is not.
Like I said, it's lighthearted Black Mirror. It's like it's that same. It's in line with some of the
hard science fiction. So
it's in line with like that Miley Cyrus episode last season. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the idea that like your technology is monitoring everything you do. Only in this reality, all that technology is looking into her life and gathering the data, and then using AI to generate a TV show out of that. Because they say like even Selma Hayek isn't like there's no real actors acting in that. It's all AI generated using Selma Hayek's likeness. And the funniest thing is because like it's generating a TV show based off her life and like she's watching this TV show, that means it has to do that within the show, and it creates like an infinite thing. So now it creates fictive levels, right? because Selma Hayek is watching Cate Blanchett play her in the thing, and I assume that just goes on into infinity.
Yeah, Cate Blanchett's watching like Glenn Close.
Yeah.
It's like, it's gonna be something else. Yeah, I think I have to give credit to this episode. Like, I'm not into like happy Black Mirror really, but the one thing I have to give credit for is I know you're not big into meta, whereas I am. We've kind of gone over that when we've talked about things like She-Hulk and other shows that really kind of emphasize meta storytelling. But I have to give them credit, not just because they went meta, but because of how meta they went. They went like way meta. They saw the meta rabbit hole and just dived in head first. You know?
They did. And guess what? I did not hate it. I expected to hate it. I
kind of thought that would be the reaction. Like, I'm like, normally he doesn't like meta, but I think will appreciate just how meta they go. Like, the fact that they go that far, you know, is, I think, something that you would dig. So, yeah, it did that, and then it ended with a happy ending, which is very modern Black Mirror versus old Black Mirror, which would have had like a really haunting and horrible ending. which is pretty much the case for the remaining episodes we're going to be talking about. Really, they really brought back that Black Mirror gut punch, if nothing else. And the funny thing is the rest of these episodes, well, I guess one of the episodes of the remaining 4 that we're going to be talking about has like a true technology angle, and the rest of them don't. Like, it doesn't even feel like there's any tech angle anymore, which is the point of Black Mirror. It isn't just to like criticize technology or something, but it was the idea of like the side effects of technology. If technology makes this change to our everyday lives, then what are the side effects down the road of that change? That's kind of like the original quote that Charlie Brooker used to describe Black Mirror when it first debuted.
And then it largely abandons that statement this season.
I think episode 1 kind of touched on it a little bit. I think episode 3 touches on it a little bit.
Episode 1 is like all about it because it's all about like,
but from like this lighthearted perspective.
Yeah.
And then episode 3 really hit it hard, but the rest of the episodes didn't at all. And the first one that doesn't at all is episode 2, Lock Henry.
I would say streaming services, Netflix plays a role in the narrative of this too, because it's kind of like, Lock Henry is kind of a meditation on people's obsession with like true crime and how like accounts of true crime or tragedies are commodified. You get to a point where, because it's about these 2 documentarians who, the one documentarian, the guy's girlfriend, she learns about the story in like his town of like all these horrific murders that happened, and immediately she wants to switch the focus of the documentary they're planning to make to that.
Which is something that the male documentarian, her boyfriend, is uncomfortable with. That's not what he wants. He wanted to do this very simple, lighthearted, even though he's from the town in which these horrible events occurred. It doesn't even occur to him to exploit that. He just wants to tell the story of this guy who guards eggs.
Yes.
You know? And then she convinces him that not only would they be respectful of the source material of the town and everything that's happened in the town, but that they can bring to light his father's issue, which is that his father passed away in relation to the events of happening, but not directly. Well, that changes as the episode goes on, but to our knowledge at that point, he's indirectly, his death is linked to this. And he wants to, the one thing that I think really convinces him to go for it is the idea of like putting that into the story so that that's exposed. But in the process of making this documentary, and the weird choice of like using an old VHS camcorder or camera that his dad had and taping over these old detective shows that his mom used to tape, a show called Bergerac is what it was called. It's this detective show. And in the process of like doing that, his fiancée accidentally uncovers the shocking secret, which is that not only was his father, who died that he thought was a victim of this killer in like an indirect way, not only was his father directly involved in these crimes, but so was his mom. And they were like psychopaths that would torture and kill people with this other guy.
And that's why
actually seemed to be in charge of the other guy with it, where the other guy was almost like a reluctant partner. They were the dominant figures.
Yeah, and in uncovering this information, the girlfriend, she gets herself killed trying to escape from his mother.
I think that was pretty well set up. Like, I want to interrupt there because they had a whole part earlier in the episode where they talked about how the killer was able to get away with killing so many people in there. And they said it's because, you know, you can take a wrong step on a hike out here and end up down a stream and dead, you know?
Yes.
And then that's exactly how his girlfriend dies while she's trying to run away from his mother. She's not killed by anybody. She takes a wrong step and she dies and goes down the stream.
Yeah, it goes down the stream. And then, of course, he has to live with his mother, lays out all the evidence with a note that says, for your documentary, and kills herself. And then he's left dealing with the tragedies he's uncovered, like the horrific things he's learned about his parents, losing his mother and his girlfriend, and then being paraded around by this soulless internet streaming company who just cares about like all the awards and money they just made off the documentary.
Yeah, not even just the company. It's like his friend that's in this series as well, that's helping him with the documentary, is like calling him after watching the BAFTAs and seeing that they won the BAFTA, which is also funny because the guy doing the voice in the background for the BAFTAs is Richard Iota, who we just saw in in the new Fable trailer.
Fable, yeah.
But yet, like, his friend who's like just lives in this town and is the town's decaying because of the murder story, but now because it's been like commodified in a way, it's suddenly made it into like a tourist attraction again. And now there's like all these people there and he's calling and he's all happy and talking about how, oh, isn't it so great to his friend that he knows, like just found out his parents were both murderers, lost his mother and his girlfriend, all like in the span of like, minutes.
So it's really like a sharp critique on like how commoditizing like these stories can actually have a devastating negative effect for like the people, closest to those stories.
Yeah. It's less about the side effects of technology and more of the side effects of a cultural thing, which is
it's more of a cultural thing, but it's aided by technology and the fact that like streaming services like Netflix or in this Streamberry making its return appearance, is all too happy to aid and abet in exploiting this material.
Mm-hmm. And that's it for episode 2, Lock Henry. Now we're moving on to the longest episode of the season, and perhaps the most haunting, episode 3, Beyond the Sea. This is like a weird one because the time period seems to be like at the beginning of the space race, but with a technology that's like beyond our current understanding.
Yeah, because it is way more advanced technology. This is clearly set in the 1960s, but yeah, it's like way more advanced technology.
In some ways,
than anything that's even available today. Like, because it's understood that it's about these astronauts on a mission, and it's understood that they are not just orbiting the Earth or like around the moon. They're in deep space.
Yeah, they're like on a 4-year journey, I think they said.
Which we do not have the technology to send people into deep space, certainly not in the 1960s. And then the other thing is, they've somehow developed technology to make android replicas of these people, and they can transport their consciousness back and forth between their human body and their android body, so they can live a normal life on Earth and then go back to deep space to do their jobs when, stuff needs to be done there.
Meanwhile, television's still black and white. And low resolution.
Yeah, they haven't figured out, like, HD TV, apparently, somehow. They haven't figured out the internet or anything. It's weird. I don't know. Really, though, like, I found all the technology conceit and stuff to actually be window dressing to, like, the real human story, which is what happens when you invite a stranger into your life. Or I guess what could happen if you invite a stranger into your life to hang around with your wife, pal around with your kid.
Oddly enough, Charlie Brooker said that the conceit of this episode came from lockdown. It was the idea of like the effects of isolation on people.
Oh, okay.
And, like how that would affect people's lives and stuff. And so you can see that in this. As like a root of what this all starts out as. But it just becomes a very meditative, very well acted.
It's gorgeous. Everybody's doing their part. It falls apart story-wise, especially like the ending. I thought the ending was like too much like some shock value thing.
There's an ambiguousness to the ending that I think a lot of people either just didn't notice or aren't addressing. That like, I think a lot of people immediately assumed one thing happened in the ending, but there's actually some clues planted throughout the episode that hint that it could have been something else that happened.
Okay, give me, because it seems pretty obvious what
happened. The obvious example, and what I actually prefer as an ending is that the guy killed his family.
It doesn't really make sense. There's a logic to it, but like there is no indication that this guy was capable of murder. I don't know. If that was hinted at somewhere, I missed it.
The idea is that the trauma that occurred to him when his wife and his family were killed, and the way he coped with that as like almost replacing them, and he fell into that as a coping mechanism, like distanced him from humanity in a sense.
Right.
But I think the other ending that's a little bit more ambiguous, and I think a lot of people probably wouldn't think it's the case, but there were hints put into it, and they never showed the bodies, which Black Mirror doesn't shy away from that, so it's not like a matter of that.
Well, they showed like a lot of blood, so where's the blood coming from?
But the blood was kind of all over the walls in like a weird decorative fashion, and the guy who went back and apparently did all of that.
Well, he's a painter.
Artist. He's a painter, and he was talking about using chemicals that could dilute paint to make it thinner. and spread out more without changing the color or losing, like, there were direct parts where they talked about that as like a technical thing that he needed to do for his painting that would attach to that theory as well. The idea that he perhaps didn't kill the family, but set a scene to make the guy think at a moment that he had killed his family, as a way of saying, now you understand what it feels like to have that terror.
Yeah.
And that's like a different way to look at it, and the way they end it, and the way they show that, and the way they don't show certain things, and the way they mention certain things earlier in the episode makes it feel like it was intended to be an ambiguous ending, where you draw your own conclusion about what happened. And there's like the two areas of disparity where I think where it shows that they're trying to do that, but then it also kind of is what makes it not necessarily work as well as they probably intended, is that they have two reactions from Aaron Paul. The first reaction is to, after he sees all the blood and he has like a freak out and he lays on the ground and you see the camera flip around in the same way it did when Josh Hartnett was watching his family get butchered. So you have this kind of idea of like this extreme emotional reaction to seeing something truly horrific. But then his reaction when he re-encounters Josh Hartnett's character in the space station is very muted in comparison. And there's a practicality to that in the sense that, like, what's the true horror of the story if he did kill his family, or even if he didn't, because it's still fucked up, is the idea that he has to live with this guy. He can't, like, kill him, because if he kills him, then he's dead too. Like, it's a two-man mission. They can't get around it. He needs him to live.
Yeah, they're dependent on each other. That's why, like, when he locked him outside, I knew he couldn't just leave him there and kill him, because, like, even if he pooped his consciousness into the robot body, I'm pretty sure, like...
he's only marionetting the body. It's not, like, really transferred.
Yeah, he's still dependent on his human body to live. So, like, he can't just... Yeah. So people are like, oh, he was gonna... No, you can't do that. They're still dependent
his robot
on
body was destroyed
bodies.
When he was in it.
Yes.
And he just popped back into the station because he was just puppeting it. That's what it was, It wasn't really a consciousness transfer. It was puppeting it.
So that's not actually an option there to, like, he's not, like, really leaving his body. He's dependent on that. So they are dependent on each other to live.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's like an interesting, ambiguous ending that maybe didn't correctly convey. I see the signs that they were trying to convey it was ambiguous. And I think that they leaned too hard in one direction and kind of, like, screwed that up a bit.
Yeah, I think so too. It just made it uneven. It's not my favorite episode of the set. It's not the worst episode of the set either, but yeah.
It's probably the most haunting episode of the bunch.
It is haunting, yes. And the performances were A tier.
Especially Aaron Paul did a great job playing both himself and Josh Hartnett's character in his body,
Yes, exactly.
So that was episode 3, Beyond the Sea. And now we're going to be talking about episode 4, Maisie Day. So these last two episodes, they just, like, straight up abandoned the concept.
Yeah, there's no Black Mirror here. These are just, like, horror things. These are Tales from the Crypt.
Well, it's like in episode 5, like, it even says in the credits, it says, like, Black Mirror presents a Red Mirror film,
Yeah, to which I was prepared, because I thought, okay, Red Mirror is, like, I guess that's a new label, but they didn't apply that label to episode 4. So
but in episode 4, it was a twist. It was the twist at the end.
Yeah, it was a twist, and that's what makes it, it's actually the twist that makes it, like, the worst episode of the season.
I don't know,
my least favorite.
I think it's a total shark jump in a way.
It's a shark
But at the same time, I love when things do something that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
And then fuck with you, where you're like, oh my god, like, this is not what I thought this was gonna be. And where the conceit in Demon 79 is pretty much there pretty early in the episode. The kind of supernatural conceit is there. In episode 4, it's like, you're going through the whole episode with a completely different idea of what the story is. And then at the end, it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's just a what the fuck, and it sucks all the air out of, like, anything that was happening.
See, I disagree with that, because I think the very last shot of the entire episode, or not the last shot, but the last 2 shots, I guess, of the entire episode, brought it full circle. It brought it right back to what the theme was about paparazzi.
Yeah, like, I get the paparazzi thing. I will say the biggest sin this episode commits is the episode is called Maisie Day. There's literally a character named Maisie Day in this. She is a celebrity that is going through issues and is the subject that like everybody in this episode is obsessed with. And then she turns out to, you know, in the end they rescue her. Then she turns out to be a werewolf. And then the last 10 minutes is her as a werewolf killing everybody until she's killed. And I just thought, man, that just really robs her, like, as a character. Like, I thought they were really going to do more to, like, explore her as a person and have her have more agency in this. And instead she's just a prop for this werewolf narrative. And it's such a shame. Because she's just there to turn into a werewolf, do a bunch of killings, and die.
See,
and
I like the episode, and part of why I like the episode is because of the twist at the end, which is not the werewolf thing. That's the big twist that's like the what the fuck moment. But when she's begging to be killed, she's in that moment where she's like, kill me, just kill me. Zazie Beetz' character hands her a gun, and you're like, oh, she's saying, I won't do this. If you're gonna kill yourself, then do it yourself. She's agreeing with her that she should die, but she's saying just do it yourself. And she puts the gun up to her head, and then it cuts back to Zazie Beetz' character, and she raises the camera. And that's what makes it work to me. Is because that's such a dark and fucked up moment. After all the deaths, that moment is the most fucked up part of the whole episode.
Yeah, it's the most fucked up part because they portrayed like Zazie Beetz' character as the only one out of the group having a real conscience and not wanting to do it. And then in the very end, after all is said and done, the money is more important than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the theme of this season, where we thought the theme was going to be Streamberry, the real theme of the season is like kind of like an anti-capitalist theme in a way. Yeah. It's about commercialism and about like that kind of effect it has on people and the money culture and the way everything's about like how much money you have. And that becomes such a huge part of the season. And I think that's the journey we get with her character, is that she quits being a paparazzi after a celebrity kills himself because of something she does. She's lured back in because she's desperate for money. And by the end, it's like she doesn't care anymore. It just takes enough trauma to just revert to being selfish, to just saying, you know what, I just don't give a shit anymore. Like, I've been through the ringer and now I'm just gonna do what I need now and I don't care. And that's kind of like the story it's telling. And that's what makes this episode actually work for me, is because if it had just ended with a werewolf ending, I would have been like, I appreciate the twist and I think that's really cool, but I don't know, it doesn't work for me. But because of that moment when she raises the camera, that brings it like full circle, and that makes the whole thing work, to me, at least.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. Yeah, like that last shot is pretty fucked up and haunting, I will admit.
Yeah. It's funny with all the fucking gruesome deaths in that episode that just immediately precedes that moment, that the most fucked up thing is somebody just lifting a camera.
Right, yeah.
That brings us to the final episode of this season of Black Mirror, Demon 79. This is like sets up straight up like a Grindhouse movie. And in the end, it's like the most romantic episode.
This plays out more like a dark comedy than like a serious horror film.
Yeah, like that's, I was expecting a serious horror film because that's what, I mean, in the trailer, it was showing like, it showed like Anne presenting Red Mirror, Demon 79. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be kind of schlocky, but it's probably, the twist is going to be that it's like actually really dark and disturbing. And it turns out the twist is it's kind of romantic in a weird way. Like it's just this weird kind of creepy romantic angle, like at the end between the demon and her, you know?
Oh, yeah, when they're holding hands.
Yeah, like the whole idea of like, well, the whole world's fucked. And the world just didn't accept you anyways, and I never got a chance to be part of my world. So you want to just go to Oblivion with me?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, there's like a weird kind of romantic angle to it that's like,
this one I think was like, actually watching, I think this was like my favorite episode. Just because like I was not expecting the tone or like the way it was going to play out, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. Like, it was fucked up. It was appropriately fucked up. The demon himself was like pretty funny and also pretty relatable. It's hilarious because he is a demon. He is evil, or I don't know, like he's necessarily himself evil, but he's working for...
He's part of an evil institution.
Yeah, he's part of an evil institution. It's my initiation. Like, I have to corrupt a corruptible soul in order to get initiated into hell, otherwise I'm damned to oblivion for eternity. Mm-hmm. There's all these funny moments, too. Like, there's the moment where the whole conceit is she has to kill 3 people in 3 days to stop the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. And in 3 separate days, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, he said it's 3 people in 3 days, and then he proposes to her, he says at one point, that's just one person a day. You can do one person a day, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's trying to convince her to do it. And he says, but there's no hard rule that they have to die on separate days. It just has to be within that 3-day period. Because he spends much of the time trying to goad her into doing this, you know?
Yeah. I think the relationship between those two characters is what works in this.
Yes. The relationship between those two characters is what works.
Like I said, it's kind of like a weird, awkward romance.
Like, an example of the humor in this is when she kills this guy who murdered his wife. And after she gets done doing that and she kills the other guy, and the demon is like, well, you know, that's 3 kills. We did it. And then they look and it's still showing like they still have to do one more kill. And he's like, hold up a minute. And he calls up his bosses in hell. And he's like, oh no, there's a technicality. Murderers don't count because they're already playing for our team.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's like an interesting episode. It's the least Black Mirror of all of the episodes, I think.
Yes, it is. It got literally nothing to do with technology.
I kind of just wish they would have split the series and made a series called Red Mirror. And then they'd have Black Mirror and Red Mirror. And even if that meant just like Black Mirror was only like 2 episodes this season and Red Mirror was like 3 or you know, vice versa. I just kind of wish it was kind of like that because I did watch Black Mirror from the very beginning, years before it was available in the States. So it's kind of like, this isn't what Black Mirror is supposed to be. I have that reaction with a lot of the changes that Black Mirror has had through the years. But I have to say, overall, this season of Black Mirror brought back something that's been missing for a while that I think is probably the most important part of Black Mirror. And like I mentioned it before, it's the gut punch.
Yeah.
Like, Black Mirror is about that gut punch. It's the thing that the early seasons all had in common. It somehow managed to hit you hard in the gut. And it would set up a premise. It would take you through it. It would make you care just enough about the characters so that when they flip the script on it, you get your wind knocked out of you. It's like, oh, fuck. And then it, like, haunts you, that moment. And that's the early episodes of Black Mirror really had that. When it went over to Netflix, there were still a few that had it, but it was mostly starting to shift to something else. And then it has been gone for a few years, and it comes back, and the gut punch is back. Except for the first episode. The first episode didn't have a gut punch, but the others all did. I guess the last one kind of ends the opposite. Like, it's dark and fucked up. It's the end of the world, but it's also kind of a joyous, romantic moment between these characters somehow. That's kind of it for Black Mirror. One thing I wanted to bring up though. So here's why the last episode of Black Mirror had like a little creepy tinge for me specifically. So the name of the episode is Demon 79. This episode takes place in 1979.
Yes.
What's the day that they're building towards that all the sacrifices have to be made on?
I don't know.
May 1st. May Day.
Oh, May Day.
Is it?
Okay.
That's my exact birthday.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay,
May 1st, 1979. My exact birthday.
Your exact birthday. Oh, that's crazy.
I guess I'm the apocalypse.
Yeah, you're the apocalypse.
But yeah, that's it for Black Mirror. And next week, we are going to be celebrating our 100th episode by playing a round of advocates of great entertainment. This time, we each picked a movie from the IMDb Top 100. We just kind of went through it and picked a movie that we wanted to do. And so, here we have it. My pick is going to be Ikiru, which is on HBO Max. It's an Akira Kurosawa film. It's old Japanese subtitled black and white movie. It's on HBO Max. It's my favorite Akira Kurosawa movie, and it has nothing to do with samurais, though. For an Akira Kurosawa movie, it's an anomaly, I guess, in that sense. Will, tell us about your pick.
My pick is The Shawshank Redemption. It is a prison drama based off a short story by Stephen King. It stars Morgan Freeman and,
Tim Robbins,
that's it, thank you. And it's a classic. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. That's my pick.
And that is available on Tubi, which is free with ads.
Yes.
So check that out there, or you could rent it somewhere from any of the Amazon, Apple, YouTube, whatever. You can rent it on any of those as well if you want to watch it in higher definition without ads and all that stuff. That's also an option. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up any of the container stories for our podcast, you will find all of the relevant links in the last 2 paragraphs, I believe, or the last paragraph of each article. We'll have the links to our SoundCloud page, everything else that you need, the RSS feed for the podcast, all that stuff's there. You can also subscribe to our podcast through Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast just by looking us up. We are OnScreen. Our network is The Total Screen. That should help you find us, and then you can subscribe to us there, or you can get the entire backlog of our podcast on our YouTube channel, as well as other content. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.